Hey guys, we're Vox Media. We're from Vox Media. My name is Josh, and we are going to talk a bit about Polygon and design at scale. Do some quick introductions. All the way down here to the left, this is Ted Irvine. He's our director of design. To my left here, this is Brent Laverty. He is a designer for The Verge. To my right is Georgia Cowley. She's a designer for SB Nation. Warren Schultheis here is a designer and features designer for Polygon. Down the end is Ryan Gantz. He is our director of user experience, and just would like to say it's an honor to be able to talk to you guys today. So thanks for that. I'm going to pass it over to Warren to tell you a little bit about what Polygon is.
How many of you guys actually are familiar with Polygon.com? Cool, nice. For those of you who aren't, do you guys like video games? Yeah. Yes? No? Websites?
One guy.
Do you like websites? Go websites. Polygon is a website. It's a gaming and culture website that we built and launched in October. Actually, we built it over the course of 6 months prior to October of last year. And we're here to talk about it a little bit today. But before we do that, Director of Design, Ted, is going to talk about who we are at Vox.
Yeah, so before we actually dig into the how we made it, I want to talk about who made it. And we are a part of the Vox product team. Vox product is made up of designers, developers, engineers, QA, support managers, and product owners. So, as I said before, we've got, 3 different verticals. We all work on small cross-functional teams. We're not the IT department. We're kind of like a first-class citizen within the org. The sites that we work on are obviously SB Nation, which is sports, Polygon, which Warren has talked about, and The Verge, which is consumer tech and culture. Now, the interesting thing when we talk about design at scale is across those 3 properties per month, we have over 35 million page views and users. So it's a pretty large audience. And I'm going to toss it to Ryan real quick, and he's going to talk about Chorus.
Yeah, we're a little unique in that we get to work on our own products over time. We also, at Vox Media, have our own kind of Rails app called Chorus, our platform that we built from the bottom up. Chorus is unique in that it handles both the publishing side of things, but also some robust moderation and community tools. We have structured data rolled in. We have things like custom advertising built in, and so we actually have a dedicated team that operates Chorus and that's connected to the separate vertical teams. And so we actually build our own software, and we're iterating on our software. And so when we tackle a project like this, we're able to understand and actually change the nature of the platform, the modern media stack we call it, that's powering all this stuff.
So the other thing I think that makes us a little unique is that there are really 3 pillars to Vox. And product, as I said before, is like a first-class citizen. And we like to say that within the Venn diagram of product, editorial, and advertising is where the magic happens. And it's through those relationships that magic does happen. So I'm going to kick it to get back to the who, just for some context about this team. Just how long had you guys worked together?
Not before.
Never before. No, I've never met any of the people that I worked with on this project.
We should get you guys mic.
Can you hear us? We're not using this?
Yeah.
All right.
So the interesting thing was, we had scaled up really, really quick after we had launched The Verge, and then we decided we were going to launch Polygon. So we doubled in team size in a year, and then we've almost doubled again. So we had to kind of ramp up folks that didn't know each other that well to work together and be an effective team. And obviously they did a pretty badass job, kind of.
It was okay.
Maybe. Well, you're still here.
Polygon, when we first met with the Stakeholders, Editor-in-Chief Chris Grant and Justin McElroy, who's the managing editor, we had this really nice early meeting with them to discuss, what the site was going to be, what it was going to look like, the vibe that they wanted it to have, and I wanted to share a little bit of that with you all. It's kind of a nice thing when you have stakeholders who are kind of thoughtful and kind of culturally match kind of where the team is at. They were pretty clear that they wanted Polygon to be celebratory of gaming and gaming culture. They wanted to have a broad appeal. They didn't want just to appeal to hardcore gamers or anything like that. That we should have a strong voice, that we should somehow thread this needle between being really kind of nerdy and also kind of cool. They had an emphasis on not sourcing, or getting our inspiration from video games or video game art, but more from like, art. So they were interested in us being, experimental. So the thing that really summed their mission up was people play games with an emphasis on people. Everything that Polygon does has a huge emphasis on human beings, which is what makes me personally really excited to continue to work with it, and everybody else was really psyched to participate in that light.
It's worth noting that Polygon has game reviews and it has news and a lot of that normal stuff, but I think in many ways a hallmark of the site is like long form, is video and features that look at the people behind the games and think about the culture of gaming as, I think, what did he say? Something like, we want to write articles that people are going to read in 100 years. Like what about gaming culture is actually relevant as real human culture?
So we had some kind of lofty goals for this. The way we looked at it is we weren't just launching a website. We were launching a brand new editorial brand. We also wanted to build a beautiful, responsive site. And then kind of our third goal was to learn from all the projects that had come before. We were coming off of the initial design direction phase for a massive redesign of SB Nation. And we were able to kind of quickly take some lessons that we learned there, modify how we approach Polygon, and not only do the design direction phase of Polygon faster, but do it in a much more effective fashion.
Hello. So where did we begin? We began by putting together a team, establishing our goals, and jumping into this exploratory phase. And we started with typography. For many at-scale websites, editorial or not, typography is the basic foundation. And if you can get that right, you've basically given your design legs to stand on. This especially rang true with Polygon. We knew that we wanted to create a visual design that wasn't completely reliant on imagery, as the imagery that would be throughout Polygon was imagery that wasn't ours. It's screenshots of video games, and you know that there's so many different types of video games out there. There's so many types of brands related to video games. So we really needed to make some very strong typographic choices that not only worked with all sorts of different styles of imagery, but also worked to establish a strong brand voice for us. So we were also thinking responsibly this early, and I know that's kind of weird with typography to think about, but you have to realize that not every visual element's gonna span across every breakpoint, but typography will. There's not always going to be images that you see on desktop, on mobile. So with these considerations in mind, we began our exploratory phase, and we didn't really sleep. What we did is first we nailed down exactly what we wanted to explore. The subject matter, or the visual elements that we knew were going to be on the website, which were headlines, bylines, review score treatments, and comments. And we put together about 20 type boards, and we had about 3 meetings, I'd say, with our main editorial stakeholders. And from there, we nailed down our 2 choices.
You were using real content?
We were gut checking every choice that we were making with real content that our Polygon editors were publishing on The Verge. So we worked with real content, and we worked with directly with our editorial staff to make these choices, every choice along the way, basically, even a choice like this. So we nailed down our type choices. They were Gotham and Mercury. Those are two really nice Hoffler faces. And the great thing about Hoffler is that we had been working with Hoffler on our SBNU project, which was the redesign of SB Nation. And we'd established a really great rapport with them through their web fonts beta program. And we were able to work with them through a lot of bugs. And it was just kind of cool to see this thing is now live, and just to know that this project and SBNU were a big part of that, which is a lot of fun. And I'm going to pass the mic to Warren to talk about mood boards.
Pass the mic.
So yeah, the next step was creating some mood boards, which for us meant that we got to really, well, we were lucky. We got to, have time to kind of spread our wings a little bit and, have some space with just kind of getting creative with the feedback or the ideas that Chris and Justin had given us. So, based on the mood board stuff, we moved into these, the type boards, we moved into the mood board phase. And we're really trying to get at, some really nice details and kind of maybe overindulge a little bit in the design process. So that was fun. One of the challenges that came along with doing mood boards was, keeping the stakeholders' expectations kind of in line. One of the challenges, of course, is that they can look like layouts, or they can look like you're intending to design a very specific widget, and the conversation can very easily kind of get,
And I think one interesting thing here regarding stakeholders is, so previous to this, we've pretty much only been dealing with editorial stakeholders.
Right.
Once you get into this, the more visual phase, you're not only dealing with editorial, you're dealing with advertising, you're dealing with senior management, whether it's our CEO or COO. And a lot of those folks don't really get it. They're like, oh, so that's what the site's going to look like. And you're like, no. So it's really an interesting challenge to kind of be able to articulate to them what this means. And I think these
Repetition.
guys actually, I think you all pulled it off really, really well.
Yeah.
We just had to hit it every 10 minutes. So we did 3 main mood boards, or 3 main directions that we explored. This one that you're looking at now is called Retro Textbook, is that right? And it kind of played with mid-20th century kind of textbook vibes, and I think a little bit of 90s textbook vibes, and had a real kind of ownable, sophisticated feel to it. Another direction we called Elegant Mag, which kind of had the feel of a high fashion glossy, magazine with room to breathe, and we liked that juxtaposition where you could have, video game content next to this kind of, very spacious, elegant layout.
You can see they're pulling, you can jump back and forth, but you guys are pulling actual concepts for what pieces of the site might look like.
Yeah, we're experimenting with score treatments and bylines and all sorts of things. The direction that you're looking at now is called Schematic, which was also playing off of the idea of accessibility and optimism and kind of this blueprinty, schematic-y kind of feel that also had a little bit of mystery to it. We liked the idea of there being some sort of shared journey, like the writers and the audience, and it kind of, that one wound up being the direction that we went with. So that was a really interesting process. It obviously took a long time. There were a lot of, creative arguments and good conversations. But at the end of the process, everybody was pretty psyched, and a lot of the DNA, as I'm sure you can tell from the other mood boards, made it into the final design for the site. Another fun thing that since we retained the mood boards throughout the process, we were always able to dip back into them to make sure that we were preserving details and things that people really cared about. So I don't know if many of you remember, but when we launched, we had a bunch of secret Easter eggs kind of buried in the site. If you, for example, type in Zombocom to the search field, you'll get a little surprise.
Is there some kind of contra code in there too?
There's some contra code in there.
thing.
Yeah.
Anything.
You just have to find out.
Yeah, I don't know.
Welcome. So at any rate, yeah, we really wanted to preserve a certain sensibility that was paying attention to details and nuance. So that was what we went into the next phase with. which Brent's going to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, so once we were done slamming down some super sick mood boards and a direction was chosen, we had to figure out how to actually build this thing. So first we had to gather like requirements, not just from editorial, but from other stakeholders like our CMO, our CEO, high-level product and advertising requirements. Then we rough wired some user experiences and quickly transitioned into InDesign and code. And InDesign, like
InDesign.
that, isn't that like a print thing?
You making a magazine?
Isn't that for magazines?
I think so.
Boston Globe recently did a fully responsive redesign, and it was really successful. And it was Upworthy, right?
Upstatement.
Upstatement, right. And they used InDesign, like popularized the use of InDesign as a responsive design tool, and we kind of piggybacked off of that success. And we needed one application to share all these assets that we were churning out, because we were initially working with 3 different applications, and it was just kind of a mess. There were definitely a lot of growing pains, and you guys can probably chime in with your own stories, but I'd never really touched InDesign since I put together some thesis thing in college.
I want to hear more about this thesis thing.
Oh, you'll see it later.
Neat.
Neat. So we needed to come up with a process and a production cycle because we had so many pages to turn out, and we only had 3 designers to do it. So it basically came down to tasking, designing, approval, production, refinement, and repeating that. We tasked designers. Go back. We tasked designers out with a page apiece. Then we just started. We jumped into design. We sought approval as quickly as possible. Put it into production and code. Refined it later, and we just repeated that over and over and over.
I think one of the interesting things about like why we did a ton of mocks is that from a sales, like obviously we're an ad-based revenue, like that's how we get money, and sales needs something to sell. So literally the second we had mood boards done, like they were like, "Can I take that and sell it?" And you're like, "Dude, that's not really anything yet." So we had to kind of structure how and like we rolled these out due to the needs that they could actually take things to market. So it kind of makes you actually redefine what the production cycle is, and that's kind of the why of how that came up.
You can go to the next one. So in the end, or in the beginning, we had 25 key screens to design across, at least 3 different breakpoints. It was news articles, it was reviews, it was features, it was forums, forum posts. And we wanted to make sure that stuff was figured out up front across as many screens as possible because we didn't want our developers to have to fill in the blanks. We wanted everything resolved. And in the end, when we launched across those 25 key screens, we launched with tens of thousands of pages. And that's so many.
That is like so many. The Polygon staff had been kind of incubating on The Verge for quite a while, so at the point when Polygon actually flipped, I think we'd actually, for a period of time, they were publishing both to The Verge and to Polygon, though it was dark, at the same time, and we had a bunch of features to migrate over, a number of which Warren did himself, so that there was actually a huge amount of actual content actually populated at launch, which is actually kind of a cool thing to be able to do.
So in the end, the key takeaways are leave no breakpoint behind, resolve everything across as many screen sizes as you possibly can, move from design to implementation quickly, get it into code, validate it there. If your ideas don't work, fix it. And as all these things are stacking up, you're accumulating pages like crazy. At some point, periodically, step back and refine holistically and just make sure there's no stragglers or things that aren't consistent with the rest of the site. And this one makes me kind of sad because I'm talking about it like I know what marriage is like. Tear. Marriage should be happy and or marriage between designers and developers should be symbiotic. You guys need to iterate, improve, design, and work together. And don't shelter anyone from the process. A lot of times, at least in agency settings, designers and developers just worked in different spheres and stuff would just waterfall onto them. We don't work like that here. We bring everyone in to stakeholder feedback sessions. They need to hear it. They need to be able to contribute ideas and solutions. And just talk about your feelings, dude.
Yeah, it's worth noting that, like, just before I get into design takeaways, like, in addition to, you know, there's a couple of differences. Because we're a product team, we get to work on our stuff over time. And we also, you know, though we bring stuff to stakeholders, whether it's Chris Grant editorial or higher up at the company, it's a much different relationship than showing stuff to a client, like in an agency mode. And part of that is, like, you can really, and I think it's a good takeaway for anyone, even if you're doing freelance or agency work, but is really trying to, like, collaborate and empower the people you're working with, bring them into the fold early, otherwise you get this kind of us-them developer stuff or something else. But, you know, as Ted mentioned, we had done a big epic project, or actually overlapping with Polygon last summer as well, that was its own big redesign. We iterated that process a little bit, both in terms of design at scale, but particularly around responsive. So just a few points that, like, just to step back a bit, that, like, Vox we're kind of taking away from all this. Responsive is still young, but there's a few things we're kind of learning as we iterate our process. Point number one is get real as early as possible. In this case, you know, the lead front-end developer on Polygon was Dan Chilton. He was kind of actively present in Campfire and in a collaborative mode with designers as they were working through things. So he was able to get ahead of stuff, to anticipate what was coming, to give feedback in real time. And then he started actually building out prototypes of stuff, even when only I think the exploratory phase was happening, right?
Yeah, during the mood board phase.
During the mood board.
He was working on the gradient pull quote, like, really early on, I think.
Right, so he looked at mood board, started to pull out pieces and figure out some of the front-end attack on that. I don't know how many front-end developers are in the audience. But getting real, particularly with responsive, you know, there have been other projects we'd worked on where we spent a bunch of time in design, finally moved on to development phase, and then you have to blow everything up again.
Yeah, I think like one of the other things we kind of learned from that is, like, we even revamped how we do mood boards now. We do responsive mood boards. So, you know, kind of we use Photoshop as kind of like a sketching tool, and then we quickly take that sketch, we get it into markup, we make it responsive, and that's now how we actually present initial design directions. So that way, like, all the stakeholders can get a better idea of, like, what this thing means across breakpoints.
Yeah, there have been projects where we do complete. Sorry, jump around. There have been projects where, and I think we would do more kind of, you know, markup first in the browser design. But you know, one, we really care really strongly about the visual look of our things, and two, to the next slide's point is, you know, whether it's for advertising mockups or pitches or other things, reality is, at least in our business, that, you know, some of these detailed mockups are necessary. They're valuable, and they're also sometimes necessary. And so what we've found is that it's sort of absolutely critical to build responsive habits, that you design all three breakpoints at once, and that you show all three breakpoints at once. And so there's no chance to kind of, you know, everyone looks at one desktop-only mockup, says, yeah, that's fine, and then it turns out later when someone's got to build it out that there's a bunch of things that are mysterious, and you end up having to change things you wouldn't have had to change. So that's pretty deep. We're kind of pretty strongly responsive thinking company at this point. I think we can all speak to this a little bit. We didn't get into it too much, but Vox is a kind of, at its core, like a distributed company. We have bloggers all over the place. We have offices in a number of places, and the roots of the product team are actually distributed. So a lot of the conversations happen in Campfire or other tools. In the case of Polygon, I think you guys, I know,
Just me.
Warren was remote, and you guys all kind of came together to co-work and get kind of trust down. Hangouts work really well for that too. But I know that having conversations with folks last night, it seems like there's a lot of people trying to figure out how to make distributed collaboration work. And if there's any questions, we can talk to it. But the other big thing about responsive is that because there's so much of the detail is in how things fall across breakpoints, or the interaction that you don't really experience until you get into a touch environment or anything, is you have to plan for polish at the end and not the beginning. You can do a lot of detail work, whether it's on your style tiles or your mood boards, and pin down a language, but you have to, as an organization, as a team, expect that you're going to make time to, both for designers and front-end devs, to kind of like figure out that fine-tuned stuff at the end, because you might try to do it in Photoshop, but it's not quite the same. Are there many front-end, like people who call themselves front-end devs here, or partially front-end devs? A few? Okay. Some quick tips that we were discovering. As we said, try to make, in this case, Dan Chilton, but the whole team, part of the design conversation. That's different for every project across Vox, but clearly like cross-functional and devs and front-end devs connected to design and empowered to help make decisions is huge. The other thing that we discovered on this was have a single developer or a set of standards that informs how we structured kind of the front-end build-out itself, even just in terms of in our app, how we did mix-ins if you're doing SaaS or whatever. The previous project, SB Nation, became a little bit schizophrenic because we had multiple people doing different kinds of front-end at the same time, and we're actually still now kind of refactoring that stuff to meet our standards. And the other thing with any epic project is we're discovering is critical. We did 2 massive site launch and redesigns last year, and it would be great to have been able to slice them a little bit thinner, do them in phases, do more beta testing. We did a lot of it. In this case, launching Polygon Dark was huge because we were able to get authors in there before anybody else, test this stuff. But it's just a good reminder for any project. And big lessons, and I think anyone, we can all speak to this too, but a few things that we're discovering as a company is like responsive design isn't a design philosophy or approach, right? It's an organizational one. And that means that in our case, like advertisers, sales, developers, everyone needs to be able to understand that it's different. It's not like the old waterfall process. It's about collaboration and really understand kind of what it means for breakpoints. And we didn't speak to this much, but we have a dedicated ad team working on responsive ads and kind of the whole structure of product, but I think the company in general has changed just in the past 2 years because of this. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on the change there. As I mentioned, kind of slice down, try to find ways to make epic projects smaller. And because of the team difference, it's not like you can just tell a bunch of developers, well, just match the comp. You have to trust them to see the vision and to collaborate. And so that comes down to a good team. As you saw on the previous slide, that wasn't our team at all. Just to step back, we want to take some questions, but just a sense of like what's different at Polygon since launch. As y'all said, each person on this team is now somewhere else. You're still on Polygon.
Mm-hmm. I'm on SB Nation now, which is a sports site, Vox Media sports site.
I moved over to The Verge because that launched a year ago, and I think we've learned a lot, and it's time to push it forward.
We've been able to, now that we have kind of, as an organization, we now have dedicated teams for each vertical who are kind of sprinting. We do Agile. They're kind of sprinting independently. We also have a platform team. We have a dedicated ad products team. And we actually have a systems and an ops team as well. And there's kind of processes in place to make sure all these teams are talking to each other. Because as we said, that collaboration is kind of how the magic happens.
And while last year was the year of massive projects, this year is a year of smaller focus projects. We just launched The Verge Video, which is The Verge's first foray into responsive design. Yesterday, we rolled out new Polygon Hero, which gives editorial a ton more flexibility than what they had before. And we've also rolled out some new ad products where we're kind of focusing on brand engagement as opposed to direct response.
Polygon right now on the front page.
Yeah, on Polygon right now, literally you can see the new Hero, and if you scroll down, you can see one of the new ad products. And I mean, I think it's a rather interesting time because we're trying to really raise the bar across all of that, and it's really nice for everyone to be working really, really closely together on it.
Yeah. We would love to take any questions. You okay?
And we actually have some T-shirts to give out for people who are brave enough to ask some questions. Yes.
All right, back here.
Oh, he's got it.
Oh, he's running with the mic.
He's got it.
Yeah, there's.
What started
Polygon? Like, why did you decide to start one that was focused solely on video games? Did someone come to you and say, hey, we want to just do video games? Or was it kind of a collaborative effort? Just give us that info.
So I think like we don't just kind of like spin up new verticals at a whim. What happened here was that Chris Grant, was had left or was in the process of leaving Joystick.
Yeah.
And had reached out to our COO about potentially coming to Vox. And for us, it's really about having talent that is going to come and kind of lift up the site. Then we're like, maybe this week we'll launch a games vertical.
Right. I mean, I think it's, the roots of Vox are in sports, and this kind of network of team and sport-focused kind of fan-powered blogs. The Verge was the first kind of new vertical, and that was 2011. And I think that there's a couple things. Like one, people, it's clear that people have been excited about our platform and what it's capable of, and kind of, but also like that Venn diagram is really appealing. And so we were able to get the Verge spun up that way, and Polygon came over as well. I think that I'm drawing a blank. I was about to say something else. Why games? Oh no, and that's I was going to say our core demographic.
Yeah.
Both on all of our verticals, our audience tends to be, what is it, like 18 to 34 male, a little bit more affluent, a little bit more educated, and after all the work after kind of getting to know our audience better through The Verge, it was kind of this feeling that, the games would work well too.
Come over to you. I'm interested in your content management system, the underlying system, and whether you have any translation involved in that content, or whether it's English only still.
That's a good question. It's still English only.
Okay.
We call Chorus I call it the modern media stack. Content management in its traditional sense, like WordPress, is only kind of one portion of what Chorus does. But just in terms of the user experience or the editor, there's no translation yet. It's come up before.
Yeah, it's definitely on our roadmap. Our roadmap is just
we got a thick roadmap. I think it's particularly in terms of like Spanish and a lot of the soccer blogs we have. It's come up as a thing, but we'll see how it evolves.
So is Chorus, did you build it yourself just to use internally, or is it some platform that anybody else can examine?
It's still only internal.
Okay.
Yeah, we built it. We've talked about open sourcing it and things like that. But essentially, it's become, both like the kind of technology and the design that it powers. It's kind of become a core part of what Vox does. So I don't expect that we'll spin it off anytime soon. I'm not sure.
Hey, can you talk a little bit about the collaboration between teams, that communication that you said was vital? You said you had processes in place. We at my company, we recently went under a huge redesign, and we've got our own CMS as well. And I know it's very difficult to keep large groups talking over big endeavors in an adequate way.
So yeah, as I guess the sole member of the team who wasn't in DC for the duration of the project, or at least most of the project, I did get flown out there a couple times. I spent 2 weeks at the outset. But yeah, we leaned really heavily just into over communication and Google Plus Hangouts, and we found that because there's so much opportunity to misunderstand each other when everything's just in Campfire, for example, we really tried to have face-to-face communication, and that helped a lot. Every time we kind of re-leaned into that, we noticed the team culture was kind of getting better. So that's what I would say really helped most.
In terms, yeah, well, I don't know anyone else has anything to add.
I think we just put together a really good cocktail of technology. We utilized 37 Signals Campfire chat every day. The moment all of us woke up, we were in that talking, saying good morning. Around 9:30, 10 every morning, we would check in with the entire team. Every evening over Google Hangout. Every evening at 4:30, we did a design hangout just to look at what we were doing throughout the day. It was just a lot of And then, of course, we talked individually and joked around a lot. We had Warren in for 2 weeks just to establish a good relationship, a good rapport, and build that trust, like he was saying. But I think just that cocktail of technology was like really
Yeah,
helpful.
and the other thing that we did is once we got out of the initial design direction phase, we worked agile. So like we had Scrum, every day, and that helps the communication cycle. Like everyone literally knows what everyone else is working on every day.
Yeah. In terms of the broader organization, we actually adopt some Scrum, some Agile-like practices at every level of the company. So we have a periodic meeting, each vertical team has a regular meeting where representatives from sales and representatives from revenue and representatives from ad products and other teams are there. And then there's a very high level product team, like what products team is doing, and that has its own kind of backlog and its own cycle. So there's a proliferation of meetings, but there's a time when you're going to be able to voice something, and there's a place where that goes. There's a backlog where if you have a concern, you can know it's going to get addressed. I don't know if that.
We also rolled out. You should talk about Beacon.
Right. We actually have a tool that was launched. I'm wearing a shirt from one of our recent hackathons, kind of a product hack week, or 4 days, I guess. And we built a tool that allows anyone at the company to transparently look at what the product team is doing, like when the deploys are scheduled, what cases literally in Fogbugs is Polygon working on, is the platform team working on, is Verge working on, and so it's really necessary to we try to give transparency to everybody about what's happening, and then build a time when they can voice their concerns or their questions. And a lot of that just goes into the culture, like the deep culture of the site. Like it would be really hard to take this to AOL or to some other place. The roots of Vox are in this kind of grassroots sports fans just writing about the things they care about, and then the product team roots are just a few people building a thing. And so a lot of the vibe of how we collaborate is scaled out of that. I don't know if that helps.
How many employees on the product team? I didn't know if you already said.
We think like 40.
Approximately 40, with probably someone started.
You would think we would know this. I'll say the number has changed. This is the year of focus, but the number's changed enough in the past year that it's hard to remember. It's 200 people that are full-time at Vox, and I think 35 or 45 that are on the product team. Are you counting? He's literally counting. Product.voxmedia.com. They're all on the team page on our blog.
I just got a quick question I'm here. Quick question about not so much the design or development side of it, but the ad side of it, the advertising. Looking at responsive sites like yours, I'm always wondering how you actually implement advertising, considering that it's your bread and butter.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering how you actually communicate with the ads team, how responsive design is actually influencing the advertising, and how much money you actually getting.
That's a fantastic question.
Polygon right now on the.
Yeah.
So I think we can literally show you how responsive is kind of influencing ads. So if we scroll down, and I'm going to cross my fingers that this one is responsive. It should be. That ad right there is a unit that we developed in-house. Shrink that browser down. Let's see it. Let's see if everyone did their job. I don't know. I'm taking a leap of faith here.
There you go.
Maybe that one isn't right now.
There we go.
All right. Well, so the idea being is that one actually, per device, you get a different ad served, a different size ad served, and if you collapse it down, it responds. It responds in the same fashion. Now, the way that we actually communicate with ads is it's in our DNA. We have 6 of our designers, 2 or 1 of our front end developers is on the ad team. A product team member actually runs the product vision for that ad team, Like we're joined at like the hip as
Yeah.
much as we can with sales.
We
So
we even have a number of people that are on other teams that started on the ad team.
yeah,
Just as I said, kind of thinking responsibly is a habit that you get into. We all kind of think of advertising as part of what we do. And so even in the mood board, I think you guys were saying earlier, even in the mood board phase or in very early layouts, there was thinking about what the language of advertising would be and how those would fit into the page.
Yeah. Sometimes we aren't even given explicit instruction from the ad team, other than there should be ads on the site.
Right.
So when we were making the Verge Video Hub, for instance, we were coming up with brand new ad units on the fly. Like, the goal eventually is to never run any standard advertising units on that site.
like one of the yesterday, an ad unit that Brent had actually come up with while we were in the design discovery phase, which was like, a way to put an ad up in that top hero area, launched for the first time.
Right.
So I think like the cool thing here is like, it can come from the ad team, it can come from one of the designers on the site, it can come from sales. Like there's not like there's not like one person that's like dictating when and how and where. It's much more holistic than that.
Yeah, the tall boy came from us as well, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just recently launched a new article
we should-
page.
I think it should be Polygon.
Georgia might be able to bring it up.
The other thing we've just rolled out is we rolled out a team called Vox Creative. One of the things that we haven't really touched on is we have a in-house video studio, and Vox Creative is a mixture of product, sales, and the video team. So we can now kind of do we can literally do almost any kind of ad campaign in-house. So that's I don't know a month old.
Yeah.
And we've got some we have some interesting things that are coming up there. But more to what Brent was saying is our hope is from an ad standpoint, banner ads blow. They're just they're a shitty experience for the user. They're a pretty poor experience for the advertiser.
Crash prone.
Yeah, Flash is terrible. None of all the stuff you're seeing that we're doing, none of it is Flash based.
Yeah.
So we're making a very hard push this year to kind of radically change what ads are at Vox.
And in order to do that, we've had to take it internal. We've had to essentially build a little agency within Vox. Responsive advertising is not a technology problem. You see what the stuff you're able to do with an ad that scales, get some JavaScript in there, really interesting. The challenge is that brands and the ad industry itself is not structured around embracing new shit. It's built on metrics and it's built on shapes of ads. Even when you see these kind of new groundbreaking units, it's all based on kind of metrics and stuff that's really hard to change. So we've had to kind of do it from the inside out.
Yeah, we launched we had a similar unit to the one that was on the Polygon homepage on the Verge homepage 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And from an engagement standpoint, out of the number of people that had scrolled that far down the page, 1 out of 7 people engaged with the ad, which is statistically it's just ridiculous. People don't do that. So it's been an interesting kind of it's a new area of exploration for us,
Yeah.
and it's been very, very interesting.
We do have a history, just click through to the, I think Georgia had clicked to the, a feature, one of those human angle features. We have a lot of what we've tried to figure out, we've done in sports and different places, is actually kind of sponsored series and getting the kind of brand to be present on the content in a custom way. And that's, again, much, much different than kind of traditional, we'll leave it space for a rectangle. That's actually relationship building, and that's
It's also
collaboration.
I know there's been a lot of talk around native advertising recently, and those series are kind of our answer to what native advertising is. We don't want to do advertorial content. We want advertisers to come to us and give us a big budget where we can make cool shit. And that's really what Vox Studios is able to do.
It's come up, but there's talk of do we have a second revenue stream, and one of those is maybe there's premiere content. I have a feeling we won't. There have been times where we talk about is there a way to roll up some stuff into an editorial magazine that comes out from time to time that you would buy as an app or something like that?
I mean, there's definitely been discussion around it. You know, I think like right now the market for us doesn't really, it wouldn't really work well for us. What I would say is if paywalls become much more like standardized across the industry, I would definitely say that no option for us is off the table.
I hate paywalls.
You like free things? Do you hate ads?
I like good free stuff.
I do too. So like definitely not in like the immediate future.
Mike, we're right here.
There you go.
Going back to one of your slides that you guys had up, and kind of talking about your process. I came from a print background, and now I'm in the digital field. So can you explain to me your process with InDesign and kind of like how that worked? Was it your comps or like what did you use? I'm missing the connection between the two. So if you guys could talk about that, that would be great. Kind of get me caught up to speed with what you guys are doing with it.
Like step through the process?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, were you guys using it for comps, or were you guys just using it as like a collaborative program?
Right.
Where you could share files and stuff like that, and kind of,
Yeah, we were using it for pretty much everything all the way down. It was helpful during the typeboard phase, just so we could kind of mock things really quick.
Okay.
The nice thing about InDesign, as most of you know, it's fast. You're linking to things. You're not having to import a bunch of bulky photos or whatever. So that we found that really useful. You can create style sheets, and I think this was just before Photoshop introduced style sheets.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So that we found really helpful. And working in vector is really nice too, because if you need to bump something up a little bit, or you're passing a PDF over to a front end guy, it's really nice to be able to have that flexibility.
So this was kind of prior, before Photoshop mockups, or were you guys integrating the mockups?
We did very few, if any, Photoshop mockups. Yeah, we did a little in the very beginning, I suppose.
We started in Photoshop, and then we kind of found that it was a bit. It was hard to share files. It was hard for us to work responsively. It was hard for us to, just work on a fully responsive website. And Warren actually was like, we were all aware of there was kind of a problem. We felt like we were lagging a little bit, and Warren really made the push to jump over to InDesign, and it was a really good decision.
I mean, I think the other thing about like what we were doing here and not needing Photoshop is we weren't doing like things that you would really need Photoshop for. You know what I mean? Like we were like establishing a grid, setting type, figuring out how that worked across device, doing really minimal photo manipulation. Like gradients kind of exist, but they exist on top of photos, so there wasn't a huge need for it. So the InDesign kind of was a sweet spot for where we needed to be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but even the mood boards were all InDesign, or I think so.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, props to you guys on your responsive takeaways. I can't wait to share all those with my team.
Yes.
But I get, and I'm trying to say this politely. What can you tell us anything about Hoffler and Freer-Jones Screen Smart text? Because Whitney was our brand font, and that was 2 years ago, and we did a whole responsive redesign, and it was not included in the responsive redesign because we couldn't get Screen Smart, or I don't know if it was out yet, but.
So Screen Smart is actually a rather interesting story, especially when it doesn't relate to Polygon, but it really relates to SB Nation.
Yeah.
We had based a shit ton of design around Knockout, and there was no Screen Smart of Knockout, and we had gone really far down the road with Knockout, only to realize that it looks fucked, literally fucked. And we had to radically shift. We shifted to at that point we shifted to Gotham Narrow. So feel your pain on that. Did we ever get any? I think their explanation was that it wasn't appropriate for Screen Smart, which I think at that point made me want to table flip.
You should do that now.
Kotke's using what? Yeah.
No, I know. I don't have a.
Yeah, I don't remember. I do know that. I mean, I do remember on some conversations with Hoffler, like when there's something they won't bring to their web fonts, it's because they really don't think it's up to snuff.
Right.
You know, I mean, and they will talk about it with great nuance and authority. So, you know, they know what they're doing. But yeah, it is frustrating. I mean, it's another thing, another lesson about just like getting real. You know, like real. You know, until the thing is actually on production and turned on and exists, it's not done. And so, trying to figure out how you approach any kind of process with a certain flexibility, or you get, you know, if it's whether it's your web fonts or your JavaScript library, you got to know sooner rather than later if that shit's going to work. Sometimes you get bit in the ass.
Over this way. Hey. So how much does Polygon or Polygon's advertising clients, does the conversation of ad blockers come up? Does it come up more recently? Is this something that you guys are, like that your clients are more worried about than they should be? Or can you just talk about that for a little bit?
Are clients ever worried about ad blockers?
Nah, not really. I mean, I think here's what's funny is like, so we rolled out this big ad on The Verge like 2 or 3 days ago, and in Verge there's a section of forums that are meta, and you know there were a fair amount of people that talked about how they use ad block. There were a fair amount of people that argued with them about like kind of like, dude, they give this stuff away for free. Why don't you help them make money? So I think like ad block tends to be much more a conversation within like the community.
Yeah.
Like, because here's the thing, advertisers care, for us, they care about impressions served. So as long as like we're maintaining impressions served and engagement within those impressions, like they're all good. Users tend to get much more passionate about ad block, like pro and con.
And we don't put a lot of effort into un-ad blocking or. You know, like if our users want to approach our sites that way, that's sort of.
So on the big ads, we call them fish tanks, and those aren't like those are coded in like a bit differently than normal ads. We literally in the meta forums gave them the code for ad block. Or like if you're mad, like block it, dude.
It's
like,
such a small percentage of users. Like we'd rather have them as people that are engaging and generating comments and talking with us than complaining about something.
Hi, I had a question about more of the visual design. I was wondering if there was any contemplation between being like trendy and I guess more visually eye-catching as a site versus being the best avenue to consume content.
The best what?
Best way to consume content, like the strike, or how if you guys did have that contemplation and what the balance was.
So Chris Grant and Justin McElroy were pretty interested in us not being too trendy. In many ways, The Verge was already up and running and very successful, and they, were pretty clear, don't make it as sexy as The Verge. We want it to be nerded up a bit, basically. So we leaned into a lot of stuff that, we personally like. Some of the notched corners were a kind of riff on Battlestar Galactica elements. There were a lot of little details that we were, having fun with, and we were just trying to show that we were having fun, and we hoped that would kind of come across and be appreciated by a thoughtful audience.
So in that initial conversation we had with our two main editorial stakeholders, Chris and Justin, they had actually said they didn't want it to look like a video games website. That said, we did put together a mood board in like the very, very beginning. That was everything that they said they didn't want, just to make sure. So we kind of like we showed that first, and I remembered he was just like, nope, next, I don't want it. But we did go ahead and show him pretty much a very grand spectrum of visual design, and we did kind of see if trendy did work for those stakeholders, but they ultimately made the decision to nix that part.
I mean, I think the other thing worth talking about there is that we did a very in-depth and robust like design discovery phase from branding, who we worked with Corey Schmitz on, through type boards, through mood boards. We spent a solid 6 weeks of like discovery time. Which, I don't know. I've been other places, and
Yeah, it's a testament to the fact that that stuff is cared about. Is cared about. We all the whole company values it.
yeah, like design, like high quality design is like, it's one of the things that's expected from this team, and like these guys did a pretty bang up job of making everyone happy on that.
It was pretty interesting during after the tower meeting that they had. Like you guys had all these old textbooks and math paper. Like there was kind of all these interesting visual. Like there was a very deliberate. I think the brand kind of some of that came out of just the logo type and everything, but a very deliberate plan to foster an aesthetic that was not exactly trendy, but was unique.
Yeah, there was a lot of really obscure stuff. Like I don't know, there was Buckminster Fuller conversations and other little things that we.
Yeah, I mean, I think it like
geeking out on.
Y'all did looked a lot more at print really than you looked at web design. I mean, I think one of the nice things, and one of the main reasons we ended up using InDesign is that and like Georgia spoke to it, like with responsive, like typography is your backbone. As you get smaller, things go away, and if you don't have great type, your site falls apart. So it was an interesting study. It was similar to a study we had previously done on SB Nation. So we kind of we had a nice framework in place for how to do it. We just kind of refined it for this project.
Maybe sorry, are you finished? Maybe another advertising question. Companies are used to buy online and mobile traffic separately.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work now? Do you just sell digital packages on the same price, or and do the customers like it, or can you still buy special online and mobile traffic or something, or is it just a good way maybe to push mobile prices as well, to just have one?
So for us, that's rather interesting because I'd say we're in a bit of a transitional phase. So right now you can still buy really, really shitty mobile banner ads on our sites, and you can only buy stuff that exists on desktop, and you can only buy stuff that exists on tablet. Now we're making a huge shift over the next 6 months to sell things more holistically, and it's really and it kind of goes back to the actual push for responsive.
Yeah.
Is that it's the same experience across everything, and that's how we want to start selling our ads. And I'd say the response that we've gotten so far has been positive. Now on the agency side, I mean, I don't know. Look at the IAB stuff. Everything is so, it's the same ad units from 2004. They have their weird rising star stuff. It's taking time to get there. We're just kind of really forcing the issue a bit. And we're really forcing the issue because we don't want our sites to look like shit.
The industry is slowly getting the message.
Or crash.
Advertisers are slowly starting to understand that this idea that there's totally separate experiences or that it should be sold that way is not the case. But it's definitely, like all things in the ad industry, it is a slow burn.
Hey, you guys mentioned keeping your front end code kind of with a specific point of view. How do you guys kind of maintain that? Do you guys do sample documentation stuff? Do you do code reviews for that very kind of tight stuff?
Yeah, I mean I mentioned Dan Sheldon. He's kind of now our senior front end developer at Vox, and he has over the last few months set up a number of standards, and there's a whole set of documentation around it. And he's actually been involved in all the different teams to kind of help support and encourage that kind of stuff. We lean heavy into GitHub, so we have actually a campfire room. We have a bot. We built a bot that monitors all Git commits and actually drops a message into the notification room when something has been pushed. So all the developers can scan that and can kind of, in addition to regular pull requests and stuff, can scan to kind of see what's going on and encourage good best practices. We don't have any kind of a formal someone has to come in and sign off on your work. It's more bubbling up good habits from the inside. I can get into more. I can speak to some of this if you want to catch me after. Anyone wants to talk in more detail. We'll be here all 4 days, all of us. Anyone can ask us anything.
Hi. I talked to you guys briefly yesterday. So I'm interested in learning, for the 6 weeks you guys were doing exploration, how did that work? Did you have to get buy-in, or did you just like do it yourself?
Did you have to get buy-in, did you say?
Yeah, from stakeholders. And also, once you land on a direction, how did you scale that to like a larger redesign? I imagine you pull a lot more people into that. How did you maintain like the consistency and all those aspects?
So I'll answer the first part. So we didn't have to get buy-in. You know, one of the things that we decided to do is we were going to like when I started, there was what, you, me, Fuller, and Tate. There were like four designers.
5 designers, 4 or 5 designers.
We staffed up to about, at that point, 10 designers. And what we decided to do is that we weren't going to outsource design. And the question that came to me was like, all right, we're not going to outsource design. We want to make some really beautiful design. How are you going to do that? So like we gave the answer, and they were like, go do that. You know, probably crossing their fingers that we weren't going to like come back with something terrible. But that's like we didn't need buy-in, and that's one of the things that is like really awesome about being there, is that it's not like we needed to beg, it's not like we need to like make our case. They're just like, what do you need? All right, go do it, and then you know just deliver.
Yeah, I mean, if you maybe Brent or you guys can speak to the question of kind of how do you transfer in more detail? How do you transfer a vision from that big phase? I will say that The Verge showed our company that good design was worth it. I mean, like, we pushed for it, Josh Topolsky pushed for it, and then once The Verge was out there and so well received, you know, both the look of The Verge and the look of its features, kind of, we had an assumption, but it made it clear, like, that stuff is worth it, and it's good for your brand, it's good for your editorial, good for everything. And so there was that kind of momentum going into both the, why am I like, since when do I talk with a fist? So there was, have I always done that? Always. Oh, we got to work on that. So we had huge momentum going into both SB Nation and Polygon around that kind of stuff.
And I mean, I think the interesting thing there is when we talk about The Verge is while we did all of like the UI and the majority of the UX, we did not do the visual design of The Verge. Code and Theory did the visual design of The Verge, and which made a few of us, like especially me, really unhappy and a little bit sad. So at that point, we did make the case and make the play that we should take it in-house. And like the SB Nation project was our first kind of, real test of, could we do this in-house and could we be successful? And fortunately,
it wasn't easy, but it was.
It was not easy. I don't know if you guys know SB Nation. It's over 310 individual sites and then one main site. So we were literally working with 300 plus stakeholders on that project. So that project was like pretty hairy.
Yeah, we could talk about that, but
yeah, we can talk about it forever.
The second half of her question, Brent, like what would you say? And I mean, I think this is what you're getting at. Like, you've set a bunch of pages. How do you follow through? How do you enforce it? How do you make sure? I mean, how did that unfold?
Hello. I guess, I mean, mood boards are just like a visual ideal. As we started actually design, I don't know where she is, so I don't know who to look at. Well, they're an ideal. So when we set up that design discovery phase, all the editorial stakeholders and senior people in the company knew that they were ideals. But we had to make sure that stuff, when it was when the design direction was put in context, that we just retained as much as we could. But honestly, once they saw real content living within the shell that they approved, it wasn't really an issue.
Just in terms of build out, I mean, one thing in case it isn't clear is there is no them. Like, there's no, the people who are building out the thing that was designed are us. I wasn't deeply involved in this team, but there was a pretty tight relationship with front end and design early, and even our product owner and our front end guys have good visual eyes, and there's a conversation that's close, and that's a deep cultural thing. You can't just like impose that. Those people have to like each other and hang out and talk all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think even to like build on that, we've even changed the process from like Polygon to like we're now working on a Vox Media site, and what we've done is we've now embedded a front end developer in during that exploration phase, so we can much more quickly validate decisions and thoughts. So for us, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a bit of a continual evolution on what that process is and how we're actually able to effectively get those things done.
Hi there. So when you said that when you launched Polygon for the first time, you had tens of thousands of pages. How were you able to launch such a massive website and keep all of the content on there filled out and everything, and keep it fresh with the latest content?
Keep it fresh with the latest? What do you mean?
Like the latest reviews and everything as soon as it launched.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know who mentioned it earlier, but we did a lot of existing content migrations. So we had, I don't know how many features, but
185.
Enough to make you cross-eyed, or me cross-eyed, or the intern who is helping us, Ali, actually, who's amazing and has really wonderful front-end chops. She I don't know how many hundred she did, but she moved a lot of features over that are kind of our big content. The other stuff was populated automatically. I think Jake wrote a script or something that helped pull a bunch of other stuff over from The Verge.
From The Verge, and maybe even reformat it a little bit.
Yeah.
And categorize it. There's lots to talk about here.
And then,
there's a whole taxonomy and organization to Polygon.
And then the 2 weeks, like Ryan spoke about it a little bit, but the 2 weeks prior to launch, they were actually posting on both The Verge and Polygon.
Yeah.
And
going through and making sure everything looked all right. And then, we have built into Chorus, there's a set of curation tools that you can control the layout of things. And so, through the normal publishing process, that informs like where new stuff goes and how it's featured on the heroes and things like that. Does that get at your question?
Yeah, we could backdate stuff as well to get
right.
specifically to your question. Like if we were, migrating a piece that, happened in August, it was really easy to just, at one point it wasn't easy, but we had to fix that.
I should say that Chorus is one big app that's running. Like we have a live blogging tool called Syllabus. We have other things, but Chorus is a one big app that's running that's powering all 312 sites at the same time. There are no instances of Chorus. I don't know if any of that got at your question.
Anyone else have a last question?
Yeah, we do. We have a product blog at product.voxmedia.com. You can bring it up if you want. And what's the other? We have another blog for. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, we got Dribble, and we're on Dribble, and there may be a Tumblr somewhere. We, we're also, because of the close relationship we have in editorial, you'll find a lot of us pretty active on The Verge and on Polygon SB Nation sites, especially in the kind of forums and the meta forums and stuff like that. What the? Oh, I see. Yeah, now here we're talking about G+ integration. We don't get to post. We don't post on our blog as much as we like, but we got some good stuff there. You can get to know each of us on the about page as well if you like.
Great. Well, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.